Do I get to press the big red button and play the music?
No, we haven't got that.
Oh.
I'll have to edit that in later.
Yeah.
I can press
the button now, can't I?
Yeah, if you want to.
Yeah. Go on. Can I press the button and start the music?
Go on then.
Okay. Is it this one?
This one.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to the Emotional Work Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the human condition. And if you haven't guessed already, today's guest is with me live, and it's going to make for a fun conversation today. So we are talking about emotion at work in community management. So we're looking at it from a couple of different perspectives. Partly looking at what emotions do we think are present in online communities, but also what does that then mean for the role of a community manager within that kind of space. So enough about me anyway. Let's get our guest on the air, even though technically he's sneakily been on the air already. So let's welcome to the Emotional Work Podcast, Mr. Adi House.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hey up.
Hey up.
Now, just for you listeners, what I don't know if Adi does know this. He's stored in my phone as Adi the Man House.
Oh, very nice.
Because he is the man when it comes to anything kind of digital, community based. Sorry, Mike. But anything, digital and community based, then AD is the man. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome, the man, AD the man.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
No, I'm pleased to have you here. So, as always, with the Emotional Work Podcast, we open with a innocuous yet unexpected question. And this one has been prompted by a conversation I had with Suk Pabial last Friday, where he was talking about his trip to America. And we were talking about the cost of things. And one thing he mentioned was tips. So my question this week is, what makes you tip?
Oh, good question. I like tipping.
You like tipping?
I like tipping,
okay.
Yeah. I like tipping. And I don't think we do that enough, certainly in the UK.
Okay.
And of course, there's been lots of press around how tips are distributed, hasn't there? Where the companies take their slice of that.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see that working in the workers' favour. What makes me tip? I think just the expected level of service.
Okay.
Is good to have, because I think it's fair to say, sadly, that's lacking.
Okay.
In lots of places. So just to have that expected service. And just for people to be kind of attentive and just noticing the stuff.
Yeah.
So we went out for a meal last Friday, and the people there were lovely, and they weren't in your face, as in sort of checking everything's okay when you've got your mouth full of food and that. But they were really attentive. Do you reckon
they time that purposely, though?
I think they do.
If we have any waiting staff listening to the podcast, can you let me know? Do you deliberately time it? That when you ask people if the meal is okay, do you think, they're just about to put in a mouthful of food? Now is the time to arrive.
Maybe that's how they avoid complaints.
Genuinely, that has crossed my mind. Because so often it happens that just as I put in a mouthful of food, I get asked how's everything with the meal, whilst raising, sort of doing a thumbs up and going and nodding my head, because it reduces the chances of me saying anything but yes.
I suppose if you're eating, that's a good sign.
Yeah, that's true.
If you sat there not eating, then they clearly know something's wrong and perhaps avoid you.
Yeah, that's true. Now, I broke one of my rules because I interrupted you then. So you were saying they were attentive, but not in your face asking how the food was all the time.
That's it, yeah. That's it. So I'm easily pleased. These guys and girls were incredibly hard. So just the basic level of service, courtesy.
Yeah.
Just being right with you, being a good human being.
Yeah. Okay.
That's enough for me.
Okay. And does the quality of the food matter, or is it just is the tip just related to the service?
So I tip in relation to the service.
Okay.
But I think if food is crap, then that would have an impact.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
And actually, tipping the waiting staff, you never tip the chef, do you?
No.
The people that are working in the kitchen, you never get a chance to say thank you to them. The unsung hero.
The unsung hero. So I'm similar in that I don't need to be wowed to tip. If And I think part of that is about the often waiting staff are a minimum wage or there or thereabouts, which may be an unfair thing to guess, but that would be my guess. And because it's me, and I always think about this stuff, the amount of emotional labour that the waiting staff have to do is extraordinary. Yeah, so you can't, because for example, having a grumpy waiter or waitress or grumpy member of the waiting team often would mean that people are less likely to tip, I would wager. Now, if you knew why they were grumpy, or if they were grumpy about something that you were also grumpy about, then maybe. But generally, they have to put on a really positive, happy, supportive, listening, attentive demeanour, even though that may not be in any way, shape, or form how they're feeling. So they might be having a rubbish. The chef might have shouted at them. They might be rushed off their feet, but they can't show that. So the amount of work they've got to do to give you that experience, which is in line with what you expect.
Yeah. They're on stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so so because they have to work hard in that way, so not only have they got the physical exertions of walking, being on their feet, all of the service shift, carrying the food, carrying the empty plates away, the embarrassment of dropping something on the floor and everybody going "Ray!" And all of that stuff. They've also got all the emotional labour bit to do as well. So similar to you, it doesn't take much for me to say, yeah, you know what, we'll give them a tip. But the speaking to the chef bit, that's something that I do, and it quite annoys my wife. So I annoy my wife in two ways when we go out to eat. So one is I'll ask the waiting staff what they think I should eat.
Okay, yeah.
And that annoys the shit out of her. So she's like, Phil, just you. They don't know you. They've never met you before. They don't know what you like. And I'm like, no, but they know their food better than I do.
Yeah.
So they could either ask me a few questions to try and work out what I like, and then I can try and narrow it down for them and they could recommend. Or it might be that the chef is saying to them, push this dish, or, they might have something they really enjoy, and I want to know what they think of the food that they serve.
Yeah.
Because, they serve it every day, so they know it a lot better than I do.
Might be stuff that goes out of date tomorrow.
Well, absolutely. They need to, but if it needs to be used up, and the chef's saying, right, push this dish because we've got a load of it in the kitchen, I don't mind why they're pushing the dish, and if I don't want it, then I won't order it. But sure. I want to know what they think. But the second thing I'll do is I will often either ask the waiting staff to pass on my thanks to the chef, or I will ask to speak to the chef. And that gets an interesting reaction, because sometimes the default kind of response, maybe that's not fair, but more often than not, the response is concern. So it's anxiety or worry about the fact that I want to speak to the chef. And invariably, it's because I want to thank them for some amazing food. But I find it interesting that when you ask to speak to a manager at a call centre or in a store, the default is that there's something wrong, because you wouldn't ask to speak to the manager if something was going wrong.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So I like to make an effort where the food has been particularly good. I like to make an effort to thank and appreciate the chef for the work that they've been, because like you said, they're behind the scenes, not necessarily known or interacting with the customers that often necessarily.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Right, we're suitably hungry.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You did this with Joe the other week, didn't you? Talking about toast.
I did. Shameless plug for episode 30, I think.
It was
30?
I can't remember. Joe Wainwright, lovely
lady. Yeah. Yes, we did talk about toast. We did.
The Foodie Emotion at Work podcast.
So, and also, fair listener, if you run an eating establishment, I am always available for, you now have a basic requirement for getting tips. So just get in touch, let me know, invite me and AD along to your eating establishment, and you know that if you just do enough, then you're going to get a good tip.
Easily pleased.
All right. So we're talking then about emotion at work in communities now, and I suppose in a shameless plug / openness and honesty aspect, I've just launched a hub, or what I'm calling a hub, because I didn't want to call it a community. And we're doing well. So we're up to 62 people that are in the hub.
Very good.
And they are clearly accessing content, because I can see from the snooping Google Analytics stuff, I can see what pages people have been on. I can see that they're accessing, and there's certainly some value in the content that they're finding. But what I'm also finding is, even though I've prompted on different ways in different channels for people to take part in the discussion forum, that is proving a more challenging task to achieve. And as somebody who's run a number of communities, is that something that is common, or should I just be worried that people aren't engaging in the forum that I've created?
I think it is common. Okay. I think it is common. Probably, we talk about communities as an online thing, but there's communities offline, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Have been for thousands of years. And so I think there's a couple of things, really. I think, firstly, there's the time issue.
Okay.
So there's lots of communities out there. Nothing, obviously, as good as the hub, the Emotion at Work.
Thanks. All the
DPG community. Oh, crikey, yeah. Very quickly get that one in as well, yeah. I mean, these are two wonderful communities, and there are lots of communities out there, and I love the DPG community. It's big, it's vibrant, it's long-standing. There's a lot of people on there, but you are still competing for time. That set aside, I think there is some emotion around getting involved in communities. If we think, first of all, away from online communities, if you're in a room with a bunch of people, there are going to be people within that room that are going to lack confidence or worry about how they come across, what they say, and that sort of stuff. That online is the same, but probably a bit more, in that when you contribute to an online community, if you write something down, there's a permanent record of that.
Yep.
Or I'd love to see people sharing videos on community more. But that's a whole different level of confidence. You've not only got your words, but you've got your face, your identity.
Yeah.
All that stuff. So there's something within that, in that I think fear is the word. Which is a big word, because it is lowest level. It's not really fear. It's just
it's nervousness or anxiety.
That's it. But I do wonder whether at the opposite end of the scale, there are people out there that fear contributing online as much as they would do spiders.
Yeah. Okay.
Or public speaking. Better example.
No, well, I think either of those are good. One of the favourite words I learned a few years ago was ephemeral. Wonderful, and I love it because it just sounds amazing. It's got a lovely kind of tone with it. But it's the idea that in speech, so not what we're doing because we're recording it, but in everyday speech, your words are ephemeral. What that means is that they disappear. So you talked about it earlier on, they disappear. You can say something, and unless it is actually recorded, there can always be some wriggle room as to what you actually said.
Yeah.
Somebody might say, "Oh yeah, but you said this, AD," and you might say, "Well, I didn't actually say that. I said this," which is slightly similar. And then we get into memory and accuracy of memory and all that sort of stuff. And we won't go there today. If you want that, by the way, listeners, then you need to go back to the Suk Pabiao and Nick Shackleton-Jones episode. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But the making it permanent bit, I think, is really relevant, because you can't then go back, and so you can take it away and that you can delete it. You can also edit it in most forums, but what I find interesting is, and maybe it's not a fair comparison, but we're talking about kind of closed communities where you are registering or you're kind of signing up to be part of it. But as you said, there are also other communities that exist, and for example, Twitter is a very vibrant community, and anonymization on there in a way reduces the filters that people apply to words that they make permanent. There's so many stories of celebrities who have 5 years ago, 7 years ago, however many years ago it was, tweeted particular things or views on topics that is permanent, and then gets kind of pulled back out and played back and then affects
stuck with them, isn't it?
And it's stuck with them, absolutely. But then you also have others that are anonymous online who kind of chuck out some of the most horrible stuff in terms of, abuse or threats of abuse or threats of violence or insults or, all sorts of stuff, which is done, and that record is permanent, but it's not attributed to that individual because there is an anonymous identity that sits behind it. There's a fake avatar and a fake name, and it's, whilst Twitter could maybe find out who's behind it because you got to give your details when you log in, when you do that, actually the only thing that needs to be genuinely linked to something is an email address, and you can then hide that through other means as well if you needed to. So if you wanted to be anonymous online, you kind of can, really.
Yeah.
So I don't really know, I don't quite know where I'm going, but I guess what I'm trying to pull apart is that even online you can have two extremes where somebody may be that anxious of contributing because they don't want, they're worried about could my written, imprinted forever contribution come back and bite me in the arse at some point in the future. And then you have the complete other end of the spectrum where there is no censorship at all with what somebody's contributing, and actually could be construed as potentially a hate crime.
Yeah,
so
sure.
It's and I find that contrast within online a fascinating area.
Yeah, certainly. And I watched your video in Iceland, the country rather than the shop.
Rather than the shop. I wasn't getting a deep fried prawn ring.
Yeah. And so your strategy of being heard in a safe space and allowing people to move on, that safe space is really important, I think, within a community. And I don't think you create rules.
Yeah.
I don't think you have a rule book, but you do as a community manager influence a culture where it's okay to contribute.
Yeah.
And it was Mike Collins that set up the DPG community, as you know.
Yeah.
A good friend of ours.
Yeah.
And I remember sort of joining that community and having stuff that I didn't believe was just of any interest to anybody.
Okay. As in, what stuff you wanted to say?
Well, stuff that I didn't necessarily want to say, stuff that I wasn't bothered about saying because I didn't think it was of interest.
Yeah, okay.
And I can remember a conversation with Mike, and we were talking about storyboarding. I was working with an e-learning company that do real cool animations, like Pixar quality animations, and a lot of that involved storyboarding. And he was saying to me, "This is really interesting stuff." And more people are getting into this idea of storyboarding, either for a video or a learning event and things like that. And I just didn't compute with me that would have been of interest to people. So creating that culture around it's good to share, it's okay to share, and actually the stuff that you're working on is helpful to others was enough for me to start getting involved.
Yeah.
And then so the DPG community is centred around the CIPD programs that we do.
Yeah.
And of course the CIPD profession map has those behaviours, one of which is courage to challenge.
Yeah.
So it's actually okay to go out with stuff that isn't correct. Because there's some challenge that you can have around that, and it's okay to challenge others, and it's okay to be challenged. You don't go down the threats or the bullying or harassment, and actually you won't want to be part of that sort of community anyway. So I think what you do as a community manager and the way that you behave and the way that you listen to people and you pick up on these stories and you say to people, wow, that's really interesting, I'd love to hear more about that, is the sort of stuff that I think helps people to contribute. And it's not, there's that old thing of if you build it, people might not come. So your hub Emotion at Work community is it's quite new, and there's that need to sort of generate momentum and things like that, but that never stops. Never stops with the DPG community. I've had to give it, I've been up early this morning giving it some love, getting the community update ready, and just joining in some of the conversations because I've been out of the business for a few days.
Yeah.
So just being away, it already feels a bit neglected, and sometimes you need to get back in there and respond to people, because there's nothing worse than writing something or commenting on something and then not having anything back. Yeah. That doesn't help people with their confidence at all.
And is that because it's interpreted as that was irrelevant, or it wasn't useful, or it wasn't good because people didn't engage with it?
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
The mind works wonders, doesn't it, on reading into why that could be. Yeah,
because so if we think about fear as an emotion, it's about when we perceive a threat of harm. Now, that threat of harm is as much to our psychological self and our sense of identity and who we are as it is about our physical self. So if we so that's one thing. So in terms of like triggers for fear, then what the research would suggest is that when we've analysed what people describe as reasons that they get scared, it's because they've perceived a threat of harm in some way, whether that be to their physical self or their psychological self. What that links in with then is that emotions can be kind of triggered by stuff that is real. So actually things that are physically happening in the world around you.
Yeah.
But they can also be triggered by stuff that's imagined. But they can also be triggered by stuff that's relived. So, and what potentially we're talking about there then is the second one of those three, which is about the imagined stuff. That if the narrative is I've posted this, nobody's replied, therefore I look stupid.
Yeah.
Because I posted something that nobody's engaging with. So again, at the risk of it being a shameless plug, and that's not my intent. My intent is to share it as an example. So when I first put the hub online, I immediately started a discussion around what emotions are okay to show in the workplace. And of the 62 amazing people that are on the hub, one has replied. And within me then there was well, that was a really useful topic then, wasn't it? That went down well. As trying to rationalise away my kind of concerns about whether I chose, did I choose the right topic? Have I made myself look stupid? Have I tried to make a point that actually nobody, that isn't relevant and nobody is interested in? And there's lots of, I can then do some more self-talk to rationalise away that actually no, it's all alright, but that doesn't stop the thoughts running about, why is nobody engaging with that? Have I made myself look stupid? Have I made myself look daft? Have I done something wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work and effort, isn't there, as an author, in writing stuff, putting stuff out there, thinking about what people are interested in, and things like that. It's like when you see, somebody speaking on a stage at a conference. I think sometimes we take for granted what incredible work goes into that, and the roller coaster of things that are going on in the speaker's mind.
Yeah.
And it's the same on communities. People put a lot of effort in. We see a lot of our CIPD participants that have obviously sat down for a good chunk of time to think about and write about something. So it's okay to lurk and it's okay to consume this stuff. But I think actually we just need to step out and get involved as well. Even if that's just tipping the author, if you like, just by saying thank you, or I really appreciate this, or I love this about it.
Nice link, I like that.
Yeah. We should have more tips.
We should tip more often.
That's it.
Yeah, no, I like that.
And we're not just doing the average stuff; we're going over and above.
Not just doing the basic requirements.
That's it. Yeah.
So, as a community manager, then, what strategies or what techniques do you use to encourage that contribution then, or to encourage people to contribute? What do you do to try and get that you described how the DPG community is vibrant yet still needs attention, so how do you kind of continue that vibrancy? What is it that you do? So
the first thing I do when somebody joins the community is I connect with them, as in send them a personal email.
Okay. Yeah.
And say, hi, I'm AD, welcome, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I'd love to say I've got the commitment to do that manually, but that is an automated process,
okay.
and I don't mind admitting that.
Yeah.
And the reason I don't mind admitting that is so that's triggered automatically.
Yeah.
But that's where it stops. The minute somebody replies to that, they're replying to me personally.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't hide behind a community email address or anything like that. I use my own email address so that people get that automated message. And of course, I couldn't keep up with, hundreds of people joining, doing that manually. But what's lovely is people reply to that, and straight away you've got a conversation going.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm genuinely interested in why people are joining that community. Are they on a program?
Yeah.
Or have they just stumbled across the community? Because anybody can join it. It's free. It's publicly available. Have they just stumbled across it? Are they thinking about their next steps of development? Are they already on a journey? So I genuinely want to find out about people. And I get some really interesting stories as well. Talking to a guy recently who is leaving the armed forces.
Okay.
And as part of his resettlement is moving into the field of L&D. I had to think there, because there's another person that's going into the field of HR. And that, I find that stuff interesting. So straight away they've got a connection. And then what I try and do is kind of link in what they tell me to some tips around how to get the most out of stuff.
Yeah, okay.
So if they're into the field of HR, then I'll point them in the HR zone.
Yeah.
Some people might tell me that they're working on a particular project.
Yeah.
And there's always a blog or a video or a discussion that's there to help them with that.
Yeah.
And for some people it's like, right, we've never come across that on the community. Why don't we get a discussion going?
Yeah.
And some of that is about the tech. So how do we actually do that? What buttons do I click on? What do we type in? How do we get a discussion going? But a lot of that is the stuff around culture. Actually letting people know that's kind of something that they should do. That's how it works around here.
Yeah.
And when we design communities, we put immense amounts of thought into the tech, the platform, the design, the functionality, the user experience. But I think we often miss the idea of putting thought into just the people stuff. How do you drive those behaviours? What behaviours are you looking for? And how do you drive those? If you're looking for people to contribute, then that's kind of what you want to be influencing.
Yeah. And just to continue with that, if I may then, so what kind of behaviours do you try and encourage through the DPG community then?
So we want conversation.
Okay.
And I love conversation. In terms of content, I'm never really short of content. If there is no conversation on there, and there have been weeks, if you take summer holidays for example, there's no content on there. People are on holidays, there's not much conversation. There's always content within the HR and L&D world. A new piece of research, new video, an event, whatever it is. But I'd much rather send out the community updates that are summarising conversations that are happening. So that is the behaviour. It's you want people to converse, you want people to discuss. So when, for example, I write an article, at the bottom of that article it's, what do you think about this? What's your experience? How does this work in your organisation? And get people to have a dialogue. And it doesn't matter how many that is. If I get one reply and one person talking about something, then that's the box ticked. I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
If you get a few people piling in, or 20, 30 people joining a discussion, then even better. You're then into a point that, perhaps you build a group around that topic, if there's that many.
Yeah, so that was one of the reasons, I'm going to link that to one of the reasons that I set up the hub, in that, so one of the things that I guess I struggle with some communities is they're not niche enough for me. So if you go into an L&D community, or if I pick on one that we're both familiar with, then, so if I think about the DPG community, because it is broadly about learning and development and HR, if I want to find something about a particular topic, whilst I know content is tagged and so on, actually if I really wanted to take a deep dive into something in particular, whilst there might be some subgroups set up, so I know you've got like a Kirkpatrick group for people that are interested in evaluation, and you've got the HR zone, you've got the learning zone and stuff like that. But for the topic that I'm interested in, and I think a lot of practitioners are interested in, which is the role of emotion in the workplace, because there is such a strong kind of call to action within the profession about being more people centered, about putting the humans back in the workplace and all of that sort of stuff. The reason I put the hub together was because I thought, well, there's nowhere to go for that right now. If you want to do that, you've got to go to a big broad community and try and find it.
Yeah.
And you got to try and you got to go and do the searching. And what I wanted to do was to put something together that had done a lot of that stuff for you. That so it was a community that was really specific and niche about what we then talk about in it. Now, I would argue that emotion actually is and then he dropped the F-bomb then, is a really massive topic. So actually, you could still have multiple subgroups or sub-communities within the topic of emotion. But I think it's one of those where the funnel is massive in learning or HR, so I'm trying to make it more specific in emotion, and then it could be even more niche again. But so I think that's making the conversations about a really specific topic is where I wanted to go, I think. Yeah,
it is. And see, like say so the DPG community is massive, a lot of corners. If you take just HR as a topic, that's massive. So chunking things down, signposting things, having some good search features and that sort of stuff is a key thing to do. But you find sub pockets of a community. So it, forget about the online stuff. If you think about, just a village community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Within that you've got people that have a connection because the kids are at the same school.
Yeah.
You have people that have a connection that are interested in the football team, or people that use the particular pub.
Yeah.
Or the business people in the area, whatever it is. So there's all these sub-communities. Sometimes they overlap.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're independent. So I'm less involved in the football community and probably more involved in the pub community as an example. So you're right to divide things up a bit and not see. So if I took the 8,500 people on the DPG community, that's massive.
Yeah, it is massive.
But then within that, there's pockets of people that are interested in different stuff. People that work with charities, people that work with, technology, people that are interested in recruitment. So you can form these little pockets of communities within a community.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a book that was recommended to me by Joe Cook, who goes by @LightbulbJoe on Twitter. And I'm looking over my bookshelf now for it. So it's called Buzzing Communities by... I can't see the... One moment, listeners.
Millington. Is it?
Richard Millington.
Richard Millington.
And as always, I'll put a link in the show notes. Buzzing Communities by Richard Millington. And it is really interesting reading about the evolution of communities from being maybe broad to being more niche, or the way the conversation evolves over time, or the way the conversation changes over time. And then how, as the community manager, do you bring people with you on that? How do you bring your community members how do you bring them with you? Because the level of engagement or participation may change over time.
Yeah, certainly. Well, yeah, because we spoke about building a community and getting people involved and creating that snowball, but I'm also saying that's a continuous effort.
Yeah.
But when you start a community for the first time, it's worth having a look at something called the diffusion of innovation theory.
Okay, I will add that to the show notes as well.
Fantastic. So what you've got in there is typical bell curve, where you introduce a piece of innovation and you get the early adopters. So these are the people that grab hold of the idea and they just run with it. They're first to get involved. They're very excited. They want to try out new stuff. They want to experiment, all of those sorts of stuff. And they're kind of in the minority. They come along initially and probably get involved in the community. And then later on, you'll start to get the masses twigging on.
Yeah.
And you'll start to get the rest of the population. You get those that kind of click on as soon as something happens, and then the early majority that kind of follows from that.
Yeah.
And then you get a few more that join the party. And then right at the very end of that, you've got the last to join the party, which is the laggards. Now, these... I need to be careful that I don't stereotype these people, because there's many, many reasons why people would leave something and be the last one to come along and take a look. You know, we mentioned time before, and competing for time, that might be the reason. And dare I say that there's some laggards out there that just stick their heels in the ground and they're just resistant to change. They're not interested. Why have we got this thing? Why do we need it? You know, we're doing okay as we are.
Yeah.
Why have you built an online community? Why can't we just talk to each other face to face? Or, you know, pop for a brew and have a chat? And there's different emotions at those ends of the scale. So at one end of the scale, you've got the excited individuals that are really keen and they can see it and they get it, and they see the big picture. But then at the other end of the scale, you've got those that are perhaps not interested, don't see the point. You know, what a waste of time, what a waste of money, all that sort of stuff. So you've got competing emotions there.
And do you think you could... I guess even though for somebody like if those were... And again, risking stereotyping. So we've got... If those in the early adopters camp, by the time you get to the point where the laggards are coming to play, actually you may have lost the innovators or the early adopters to something else or something new or something different. So what that energy and enthusiasm that they might have brought at the beginning, it might be there from the early majority or the late majority still. So they might still have, you know, the energy and enthusiasm might be there, but actually you might have lost the innovators and the early adopters off to something new and something different by then. Yeah,
potentially. They've certainly left a big mark, haven't they?
Yeah.
They've left a big mark, and so there is thinking about how you keep hold of those people, and maybe that's about the level of involvement that they've got. Maybe that's thinking almost like getting them to think like a community manager.
And that's something that Richard Millington talks about in his book. He talks about the importance of the role of volunteers in maintaining that snowball type effect, you know, in terms of whether you know, and I've been involved in different guises in different organisations in my time, about, you know, when they're trying to create online communities. Sometimes they're actually, no, that's a lie. Sorry, I've been involved in different guises in different times where organisations are trying to create communities. They could be online, they could be physical. And they might be called brand champions or ambassadors or other kind of titles that they're given. But
raving fans.
There you go. That's a good one. But that's what I mean. But you got people whose job isn't to make this happen, but because of their passion and their involvement and their engagement in it, you ask them to take on an additional role, for want of a better phrase, as someone who. Champions and ambassadors and is a raving fan about whatever that community is, whether it's online or physical.
I suppose, thinking about my experience, that really works. So thinking back many years ago, I was a customer of DPG and a user of the community, and as I've said, Mike Collins was really helpful in just getting me over the hurdle of getting started, getting involved, and that sort of stuff. And I was probably one of those early adopters, innovators. And then it was a few years ago that DPG kindly took me to a conference.
Yeah, okay.
It was the CIPD's L&D show, which next year is called the Festival of Work.
Is it really?
It is, yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So it's the same date, same place, same pub across the road. But yeah, Festival of Work. And so back in the days, it was L&D show. DPG kindly took me down and gave me a conference ticket, which was lovely.
Yeah.
Got me into some of the sessions in exchange for writing some blogs and some articles and covering the event. Ticks both boxes. I got, immense value from that.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I got to meet the Twitter crew and the wider L&D circle.
Yeah.
And in return, for the community, we've got some good content on there. And getting that sort of stuff done is important. And I think the early adopters are, if you think peer-to-peer influence, your innovators, early adopters are the people that can share their story with the people at the opposite end of the bell curve, the laggards.
Yeah.
So if you can get testimonies from people, and it needs to be a bit more than, how great the Emotion at Work hub is.
Yeah.
It needs to be practically, how has this impacted on your professional life?
So we're talking openly. That's not the right word. We're talking. The communities that are the topics of what we're discussing so far have both been work-related, but not workplace-specific. And I'm wondering / guessing that our listeners will be working, not all of them universally, but they'll be working in organisations where they might be wanting to create communities within those organisations. Again, they could be virtual or physical communities. And in my experience of being in the workplace, that is a notoriously tricky thing to do. Because it comes with... I think it comes with different identity aspects to it. Now, we all know, as regular listeners of the podcast will know, we know I'm fascinated with identity. We know I'm fascinated with face and face work. So that's where that's my starting point, and we know that. But if I'm working in organisation A, and I'm part of the DPG community or the Emotion at Work hub, there may be other people from my organisation in it. But if they are, they're likely to be from the similar HR learning, organisational development type team.
Yeah.
But if I'm part of a community within my organisation, then I am exposing myself to people that know me. I was going to say intimately, and I don't know if that's the right word, but I couldn't think of a different one, so I've gone with that. But I wonder if the identity risks are higher in a within workplace community, because if you did post something that people could interpret in a way that could make you look like a brown nose, that could make you look like a keener, as we would say in Bristol, with the Bristolian keener accent that would go with it, or could make you look disenfranchised or whatever. But I wonder if in the workplace, is it even trickier? I don't know the answer to that question. I feel like the answer is yes, but I don't know.
That's a good question. I mean, in a similar vein, I've come across at a very senior level genuine fears around online communities.
Okay, tell me more about that.
So I've worked with organisations that want to kind of move forward in the way that organisational learning happens, knowledge sharing, collaborating, communication, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And thinking about one particular organisation that was spread geographically up and down the UK and beyond, an online community made sense.
Yeah.
But from a very senior level, HR director level, I'm worried about what people are going to say, how people are going to interact, what if they say the wrong thing to each other, what if they share bad practice, and all of that sort of stuff. And it's quite interesting, really, when you've got that view, because my response to that is, if you forget about online, forget about digital, communities already exist. So
absolutely, yeah.
So if we pretend there's no such thing as the internet, computers were never invented, communities already exist. There are pockets of people within, I don't know, smoking shelters, cafes, side of the water cooler, in the pub after work, and they're already talking about stuff. So if they're going to share the wrong stuff, they're already doing that anyway.
Yeah.
The benefit of having a community, certainly an online community, is you've got visibility of that. And that shouldn't be used in a policeman approach.
Yeah.
You shouldn't then chastise people for saying the wrong thing, because you wouldn't do that in the other settings anyway. But you can use that as an opportunity to influence the conversation in the right way. So if people are talking about a process that it isn't correct, then there's a chance there to re-educate them. Whereas unless you appear in the smoking shelter every time people go for a fag, or actually put some rules in that prevent them from having those conversations, that doesn't happen, does it?
No, it doesn't at all. And so I don't know if it's the same or not, but I'm linking it together, so therefore I'm making it the same. So when people talk to me about Twitter, as an example, why'd you do that? Why'd you get involved in that? Why are you on there? So there's a whole great big massive conversation happening about stuff to do with what I'm interested in, and I can either go and be part of it and know about it and engage with it, or I can not. And I think about that similar to what you were saying for the workplace, and that these conversations are happening anyway. People are moaning about moaning about a process, or moaning about a change, or saying how frustrated they are by X or Y, or how they wish that A or B could happen. And if that online community is in that safe space, that place that is free from judgment, and then as an organisation, you would, if it was my organisation, I would want to know about those things, because then I can do something about it. Otherwise, all of these feelings and all of these views and opinions and stuff are happening, but I don't know, and I can't do anything about it. There's a classic thing that's been kind of touted around on social media at the minute, which I think is a load of bunkum, but it seems to be going down well, which is the board know 10% of the organisation's problems, the middle management know 30% of the organisation's problems, and the frontline operators, the employees that are at the front line, for want of a better phrase, they know 100% of the organisation's problems. And the issue is that the sharing of those problems up the chain. Now, I think those ratios are probably bunkum, but that idea that actually the higher up an organisational hierarchy you go, the more insulated you become to the reality of day-to-day life. That stacks up for me.
Yeah.
And if then you have a community where people can talk about those everyday issues and problems and challenges that they're facing, that then equips you and allows you to do something about that in a way that you wouldn't necessarily normally do.
And it's back to that point on, the behaviours we want to drive is we want people to contribute, we want people to discuss. So actually the fact that they've taken time to do that, we should never be picking up on what people have said or how they've said it. The fact that they've said it is just good enough.
Yeah.
And actually, if we start sort of saying to people, oh, you shouldn't say that, or you shouldn't say this, or you shouldn't say, that has the reverse effect, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Of quashing people, and then you think, well, I had a go at contributing before, but it wasn't good enough, so I'm not going to bother anymore. It's very easy to quash things. So I think that leadership culture within the organisation, because that was a question, wasn't it, around, is it more difficult in the workplace than it is outside? And the answer to that question is probably yes, it is. So that then begs some questions around what's the culture that the leaders of the business need to drive to make sure that's not an issue.
And then I think that, though, is irrespective of whether there's an online community or not, isn't it? If I remember working with one client who was saying, but if we again, I said that in a Bristol accent, but if we do this, we might hear all these things. And I said, well, if you're not hearing all those things already, then you're creating a culture. You create, irrespective whether you've got an online community or not. If you think that these things are being discussed and talked about, and you don't know about them already, then you create a culture where people don't want to share, and they're not open, and it's not transparent, and it's not honest. And so whether you have an online community or not isn't going to make any difference. What you need to address is the opportunities or the places or the spaces where people can be heard and talk about stuff in a way that they're not going to be judged or ostracized or demeaned or disciplined as a result. And then that allows everybody to then work with that effectively and for a better phrase, move on.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. And you're then the invited guest, aren't you, to that conversation? If you don't have a way of people talking and sharing this stuff, then you're just the never invited guest. The conversation still happens.
Yeah.
I think people will be more cautious around what they share online. And again, that comes down to the trust and, your simple strategy of hearing people in a safe space, that fits very much with this.
Yeah. So where does that leave the community manager then? And so if I play with this idea that we're talking about, that actually if we want those communities to be vibrant, if we want people to be talking openly about, and sharing, and we are right, I'm going to take a step back and then I'll formulate my question. So one of a really good friend of mine, a guy called Aaron Garner, says that it's just about, and just makes it sound smaller than it is. I don't know if he uses the word just, actually. He says it's about having a genuine interest in another human being.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, you are well on your way to understanding more about you, them, what's happening, what's going on, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and all of those things. And I really like that as a simple phrase of if we're going to create a community, we need to create one that takes a genuine interest in another human being in that way. And I liked what you talked about earlier on about the way that yes, it might be an automated first response, but then after that it's you taking a genuine interest in that other human being. So I've got that on one thing. So we talked about creating communities where conversation is what happens. Part of that, I would argue, is down to having a genuine interest in another human being and wanting to find out what's happening, going on for them and so on, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they're working on, all that stuff. What we're also saying, though, is it's at least in part reliant on the culture. Now, that could be the culture of the community, if we're talking about the DPU community or the Emotion Hub one, but it also could be about the workplace itself, if we were talking about a workplace-based community. So and now I'm building up to my question then. So if you're a community manager in an organisation, often if you have that role, you would work in, say, you might be working in marketing or internal comms or HR or learning or organisational development. That would be my guess as to where that person would sit or fit. You're not likely to be senior. You're not likely to be on the board or a director even. So with all of those other dependencies on it, where does that leave you as a community manager? Because is it a bit of a thankless task? No, actually, that other me trying to answer it. So let me ask the question and shut up. So where does that leave you as a community manager? Where
does it leave in terms of not having that senior level?
Yeah. So
how do you influence the culture?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're working in a mid to junior role within an organisation where you're tasked with building a community, and you're looking at these other dependencies around the culture or the leadership or the engagement or the involvement, and you're like, well, shit. There's all this other stuff that's nothing to do with me, yet can make or break this community that I'm trying to build?
I think it's the same old thing of chipping away at the block of getting people to communicate, converse, and collaborate, and that might start at a senior level. Okay. That might actually start building a group of, I don't know, the senior leadership team, and sharing stuff and talking about stuff and asking questions, getting conversation going, online and offline as well.
Yeah.
So so it's a little bit different in DPG in that we've got an external community, but we've also got an internal community.
Yeah.
If we can't get that bit right, there's not a chance that we do have a vibrant external community.
Yeah.
So the internal community for me is about letting people know inside the organisation what's going on.
Yeah.
There's a really useful conversation here. I've got this idea that's coming up. These people have joined. Somebody's given us some feedback. Whatever it is, just having that constant flow, and that then gets people interested in that internal community to the point that externally they're joining in the conversation, they're commenting, they're sharing, they're liking, they're posting, and things like that. So if you take that inside an organisation, maybe the place to start is with that senior leadership team of getting things right there and letting them know about the stories of the great stuff that's happening.
Yeah. Because I can imagine. I tell you what, I'm really worried that I'm being Mr. Doom and Gloom now, but I can imagine though if in my should I say this? Should I not? Should I say this? Should I not? If there is a population within an organisation that will use time as a reason or excuse, in my experience, it's that senior population. I haven't got time for that. I haven't got time for that. I haven't got time for that. And I worry that I'm speaking out of turn, and that's not a universal statement. I know there are some that wouldn't do that, but I guess I'm thinking back to my experience of being within organisations and the response I would get from, okay, so what I'm looking for from you is a post. Is for when people respond to that post, for you to respond to them, even if that's just with a thanks or with a they might have asked a question and you follow up on it, and then when you're on, also contribute to other stuff as well. So it might be half an hour a day, an hour to write the post, half an hour a day, or however long you can give me, but be on there regularly and check and so on. Is that something I can get my PA to do? Well, yes, but that's not what I'm getting at. If we want authentic interaction between you and other people that are in the organisation, we want to create this. If what you want is a place where we can understand what is happening and what people are thinking and feeling about working in our organisation, then that needs to be you and really you, not your PA via you. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, I don't necessarily know what point I'm trying to make. I don't think. I guess I'm.
So it's the barrier of time, isn't it, from the leaders in the business?
Yeah, because I can. In my experience, I guess I agree with you that chipping away at the block and getting that engagement and involvement is important. But it can be really. I guess I'm just trying to bring an element of reality to it. In that, in my experience, that has been notoriously tricky to do.
Yes. I think it. So Mike often talks about the 5 P's of building a community. Okay. The first one being purpose.
Okay.
And he says that's where you start. You start with the purpose of your community. That's got to be lined into some organisational objective.
Yeah.
Or around culture, engagement, collaboration, knowledge sharing, whatever it might be. I think once you've got that, it's then easy to bring the leaders back to that purpose.
Okay.
So we can all use the time excuse.
Yeah.
Sometimes I want to empathise with that, and sometimes I want to just say, just get a grip. You don't get a grip. You know what I mean? We can spend 5 minutes somewhere on the settee at home if needs be, just chucking a few thank yous and a few replies onto a community. And if the purpose is strong enough, then that kind of makes that a no-brainer.
Yeah.
You know, if this is a really important purpose, then time will be found.
So can you remember the other 4 P's? Purpose?
In no particular order. So purpose, platform.
Okay. As in choosing the right / appropriate platform for you.
That's it. Yeah. It might be a bit of tech, or it might be a platform as in venue if it's a in real life community. People.
Yeah.
This is a real test. This is. I feel like I'm sitting an exam now.
Mike is sat there tapping his fingers.
He is,
He's tapping his fingers on the desk. Going, come on, House.
And I don't think I've got time to Google or anything, have I? People, platform, purpose. Product.
Okay.
Product. So that's positioning, if you like, what the community is, what the product is, what the community is about, what it does. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Is that 5?
That's 4, but we'll go with 4. That's all right. Or we could press the pause button and you can Google it. We can edit out this bit and then re-record it with you going, the 5 P's are.
Yeah.
Okay. No,
Note to self, don't talk about things that aren't stuck firmly in your mind.
Okay. All right. So we've talked about some of the emotional aspects then that might be happening or going on for individual community members themselves, in terms of some of that potential nervousness about posting and sharing and that sort of stuff. We've talked about some of the emotional aspects that might be going on for community managers themselves, and then we've also talked about some of the aspects that could or do feature into it from a organisational perspective. You're talking about the senior leadership team in particular. Is there anything else then? Is there anything else that talking about emotional work in managing communities or community management, anything else that you're thinking or feeling or want to say?
Other than we can probably fill another hour.
You want to come back on the podcast, don't you? That's what that was a plug for a second round.
You know, I'm looking at the time now. I can't believe how quickly that hour's gone. You know, because there's so much to talk about, and it's like you said, that emotion at work piece is massive. It's huge, and this is just a part of it. But then when you dive into the communities, there's plenty more to talk about. I think it's just, one by one, person by person, connecting with people, building a conversation, and the masses will follow. I think that's it.
Okay. All right. In that case then, AD the Man House, I would like to say thank you so much for... Oh no, hang on. No, we need to stop. Can you press the button again so the music comes in?
Oh yeah, here we go. It's this one, isn't it?
Yeah.
There we go.
So thank you very much, AD House, for being on the Emotional Work podcast. It's been amazing to have you here, and we look forward to round 2.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely.
You've been listening to the Emotional Work podcast. Written, recorded and presented by Phil Wilcox. Edited together by Simon Leverton. You can find more information at emotionatwork.co.uk or follow us on Twitter at Phil Wilcox. Thanks for listening.
Pied Piper.
Of course.
Pied Piper.
The bloody community manager.
Oh, how could we forget that person?
Sorry, there you go, listeners. You got all 5 now.